Hello to the folks joining us. Let's give it just another quick minute here to let a few more people join, and we will kick this off. Alrighty, well, thank you everyone for joining our monthly customer webinar for mechanical users. This session, we held it every Wednesday on the last Wednesday of the month, and it's a chance for you to work directly with our customer success and product team. We demonstrate features, we'll go over some common questions, and then we do take your questions live. And our experts here are available to walk you step by step through whatever process you may be interested in learning more about. So please, throughout the webinar, submit your questions with the Q&A function. If we don't have time to get to your questions, we'll make sure to follow up after the webinar through email. And here is a look at the Evolve dedicated customer success and product team who will be on the call today. Now, just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and we will forward the recording to all registrants. You can also find our webinar recordings and more feature demos on the YouTube channel for Evolve. And I am going to let Adam kick things off today. I know he's got some really exciting stuff to show us with the new 7.2.1 update.
Thanks, Marina. I will share my screen here. So what I'll go over today is some of the stuff I covered last month with the 7.2 update, but that was released early this month. So that is available on our downloads page. As always, the release notes can be found along with what we've added with the upgrade instructions. So I'm just going to go through this update. I probably won't cover. I'll try not to cover the same stuff I covered last month and just kind of do an overview. And then at the end, I'll kind of go through another topic of one of the features that has come up quite a bit. So I just want to go through that. So starting with the release notes, one of the things we've recently added is a new link to a page, which is a list of any known bugs or reported issues or limitations that we're aware of, just to provide more insight to this. So this could be a known product bug in a release, or it could be a Revit issue. So I'll go through a couple of them that we are currently posting, and we'll keep expanding on this as needed. So with the 7.2 update, there is a known bug with some sleeves where we found certain models where sleeves going through floors come in crooked. So it's a conditional type thing. It's basically when the host object and the element going through it is not square, but it can happen with floors quite often, or it can happen with floors. It hasn't come up too often. But that'll be addressed in a hot fix. With also 7.2, we recently just had this reported with the update where the ignore tagging function within the view window is ignoring the value there. So that means basically elements are being tagged when you have them identified as not to be tagged. This will also be addressed in a hotfix coming soon. So those are the two known issues. I'm going to add some information on a 7.0 bug about if you get a message that says object reference not set or something like that. I think I covered that in the last month's call. We'll put some information there, but along with the issue that's listed here, if there's a workaround or solution, I'll put some information with that. The only Revit related bug, I think. I'll have to go back to see if there's any others. With 2024, I think it's point 0.1 and below. There's now a 0.1.1. But this version and below, there's a known, I believe it's an API issue where it can crash Revit. Revit recently put out the update, I think, with a few weeks ago, 24.1.1. That update corrects the issue. So yeah, I updated the release notes with that here. So again, this is a good static page. In the future, we'll provide a quick link to this in the product. This will stay as a link within release notes going forward. So hopefully that's useful. So getting into some of the upgrade notices, one of the changes we made with parameter sync was we stripped out a lot of family related sync rules that were previously system rules. So we ripped those out of system rules because they were uneditable and they always ran. So we wanted to make them to be able to be turned off or to be able to be edited and changed if you want to. So these rules, why we removed them, are now found within our batch file that we are shipping with. So once you install 7.2 inside of the C drive program files, evolve directory, go into your evolve version in resources, and there is a batch file, default configuration entries. I'll show this in a second, but this is the file that's now included and contains all of our previous sync rules, but it contains a lot more than that. And I'll go over that in a bit. There was an issue with 7.0 where user directed paths, this would happen with annotations, for example, but basically any file pathing directory within the settings. If it was pointed to a user path, it was invalid. This was an attempt to actually support user paths better, which did not work in multiple environments. So we reverted that back with this update. So it's back to the way it was in 6.4. Just note that you may have to repath the directory when you update to 7.2. If you get an error that points to your file path, it'll say like user path, but it won't say your username, just like it is here. Then just go to that setting and you have to remap it. Lastly here, the Foresight integration was removed with 7.2. So again, this will be handled as a separate installer. So for those that are utilizing the Foresight website, the Revit connection to the Foresight projects will be a separate installer that will add in as an integration to Evolve. That way we can have very specific tools for the specific users that want to utilize them. And as always, there's a note here that says, just remember for those who have multiple team members, please make sure everybody updates to the latest version, that you're all on the latest Evolve version per Revit version. You don't want to be going in and out of projects with mixed versions, as it can make config files get reset and changed. All right, so I'll go through a few of the key items on this list. I won't go through all of them. Certainly, if there's any that you have questions on, please feel free to post them. Few new items here. The multi-run select is a quick tool. Let me just pull up project here. So within the quick tools, there is now a multi-select button. This will allow you to select one or more elements. And when you hit finish, it'll basically select all elements that are connected within it. Oh, I think I just have to save this. Do it one more time here. So select two elements there, hit finish, and everything that's connected will get selected. So nice little quick tool. I'll get to it when we get down to that other note. Part encoder, I went over this last month. I'll touch on it at the end. I'll try not to go into too much detail again about it, but it's a little more involved. So I'll save this one to the end. The view selector is just another quick tool. Nothing too crazy here, just allows you to select the view and open it up through a drop down. So some of the improvements right here. So one thing to note is we've introduced the ability to hold a space key to serve as a trigger for shift functions. What that means is within, say for example, the quick tools, but any tool that has the asterisk next to it, which indicates that there is a shift function to the tool. This feature previously you could not hotkey. So in this example for disconnect elements, if I wanted to disconnect individual connectors, the only way for me to use this tool was to hold shift and then enable the tool. More often than not, everybody should be using hotkeys, especially for quick tools. It's what makes them even quicker. But you couldn't really trigger that function previously. So now with this change, if you hold the space bar and then do the hotkey command, it'll do the shift function. So to demonstrate that, let me just open up my shortcuts here. So we have disconnect elements. It's in electrical, it's fine. I'll just do it this way. So I have DD as a hotkey. So if I hit DD, you'll see it says select elements to disconnect. So this is the main function which would disconnect all connectors of an object. So now if I hold spacebar and type DD, you'll see it says select the connector to disconnect. So this is the same function as if I were to first click the button. You'll see select the elements. And if I hold shift and click the button, select the connector. So just another way to layer in hotkeys and to trigger some of the other functionality in here. So I think this is a small change, but a nice one to be aware of. Okay, I guess I'll read through a couple of these. There's not too many. I think there's a couple worth pointing out. Let's see. I will cover the batch file in a second. Data tables, remembering the import path so that you don't have to keep referencing it. Let's see. The error handling with linked models and sleeves. Made a few changes on that to prevent unnecessary dialogue from popping up, as well as just kind of jumping into a proper settings when a certain setting is disconnected, basically when your links are not referenced within your profile. Let's see. One thing to note, this expansion options defaulted to off. One thing we've noticed is that with element filters, when you're creating, a filter, or when you have a filter, these options here are now going to be defaulted off. We found that the part installation option does cause a performance issue. So if you do not need to evaluate part installation with whatever you're filtering against, disabling this will actually improve performance. So really only check this or any of these if you want to opt into them, is the way we're handling it. So now going forward, they'll just be defaulted off. Another thing is, I'll just make something. Oftentimes when you select categories, you'll be toggling this hide unchecked so you can see what categories are selected. This option now is saved. So if I hit OK, if I go into any one of these other rules, you'll see the checkbox is defaulted on. So just within session, it saves it, just a small little quality of life change. Okay, let's see. Just going through this list, see if there's anything else worth mentioning. I think those are pretty good. Let's see. Content. Okay, so let's get into a couple of content updates and this batch file here. So within the content updates, you'll notice that within the families folder, there is now only a single title block family here versus previously there'd be all the different sizes. Really, this family here is just a starting point. The intent behind it and the intent always behind a lot of our content is just a starting point and a place to have an example. Now with title blocks, because our tools are really built to be project specific because they reference view templates and things like that. Previously, our title blocks had a bunch of view templates assigned, but they really only aligned with our project template file. So it really would have just causes confusion if you drag a title block of ours into your project, which is not based on our title block. None of the view templates would be there, and it wouldn't really work, and it wouldn't be intended to work. So what you'll see is this title block is just a single title block family. It's parametric. It does all the different sizes. It has the view window in it, but it's not configured. So you can use this to create one from scratch. What we did do is we've also updated the template file. So there's now a EM project template. So if I were to create a new project here with that file, so here's the new template. It's very stripped down from the previous template. One of the big changes, a lot of view templates were removed. There was just an excessive amount of them. We tried to standardize on naming conventions for view templates. One of the things we implemented was putting certain prefixes within the view templates, mainly because when you're defining a view template within your title block, it may not be obvious that the view template you're specifying is not actually the one you intend to use. I'll give you an example of this. But something to point out is that within this project template, here are all the title blocks that you'd be used to. So again, if you were starting with our template previously, these title blocks would be in there, and everything makes sense because the way these are configured, they are using view templates that are in this template file. So when you're looking at one of these view windows, you'll see a view template that aligns with the project. So here's where I'm referencing a section view versus a schedule versus 3D view. Oftentimes what can happen is view templates are named very similar between schedules and views. And if you crisscross it up, where if I'm trying to create a 3D view, but I specify a schedule and vice versa, Evolve will throw an error saying you have an invalid view template, etc. So just as a good standard practice, having some prefix naming convention to properly identify the view templates seems to make sense to prevent those types of issues. So yeah, so again, just to reiterate, title blocks can be found in the template, but they will not be found inside of the families folder here. Now, jumping over to the batch file that's included here. If you have an existing project or a brand new project, what you can do is go to the Utilities panel and go to Configuration Exchange. For those who are not familiar with this utility, this is the Evolve feature that basically allows you to export and import configurations between projects. The way it's organized is there's an export and an import function here at the top. So for export, this is what it's going to default to. It's going to list all the Evolve features that are in this project and the related uh, uh, rule or config that is part of it. So this is a brand new project, so there's only the default ones in there. If I go to my sample model here, I'll have a lot more uh, things built in here. So here I can do a full collapse. So here's the 4 features that currently have rules in them, and I have the ability to selectively export the rules. Something to note is when, for example, I'm grabbing some report files, you'll notice some data tables and some profiles are also selected, which I did not check. That function is happening because we're identifying there's a relationship here between these functions. So this ensures that all configs, even though they're spread out across multiple features, that they all come in together in one chunk. So this is why we built this tool the way we did, to capture these types of dependencies and to make it easier to transfer them from one project to another. So the import function. So if you have a new project and you've just updated to 7.2, you can navigate to the install files, C drive, program files, evolve, etc. And you can navigate to this EV batch file. And when you hit open here, I'll collapse this. This will display all the various configs that we've set up as potential default configs. So every utility that we have that aligns with this configuration exchange has some set of examples being used. So you can basically use this file as a starting point to test out some new features, to take examples that we create and then modify them to your own. That's the intent here. So you'll see there's a whole bunch of colorizer rules, sync rules. Here, like I mentioned, the previous parameters, the previous sync rules that were changing families. These are no longer system rules, these 3. So if you do want to continue to use these as we had them set up, going forward, you'll have to go to import data and bring these in. If you are using these types of rules for content, and it's a standard within your company, then you can always put these into your project template file, or also put it into a directory for when starting new projects. It can be a default config. So there's other options you can do, but it really is depending on how you integrate these things into your company, how you set them up as standards, kind of determines the approach you take. So here's these rules. In addition to this, we did update the default grid states. Now, in order to see these changes, what you would have to do is navigate to app data roaming evolve, go into evolve mechanical. There is your grid states file. Basically, delete that out, and that will reset reset all of your active grid states in the project. Do this with Revit shut down, delete this, restart Revit, and you'll get new grid states. And what that really means, for example, if I open up parameter sync, we added some conditional formatting to put some indicators on things that are enabled. The order of the columns are grouped in some standard way. the best we could because every tool is unique, but we have some standard behind it. And all of this stuff can be done on your own. You can certainly modify grid states. Basically, whenever you do anything to a grid, that's what creates this file because this is a user-based setting and you make it the way you want. The purpose of grids or the benefit of having grids is that you can filter, group, sort, however you like to do it. So certainly take a look if you haven't used grid states a lot, then it's absolutely has no impact to you at all. It basically just resets all the dialog menus for you. So you can do that. If you just want to look at what we do, you could always rename this file or copy it, save it, and swap it back after you went through a default state. So it's up to you. All right, I think a couple of questions came in. Let me look these over. The bug for custom tags losing their path. Yes. So the question about the user path. So that typically came up as an issue. Here is when your file path went to a user profile and not a hard directory. So if that is broken, what you'll have to do is repath it here to the directory because what will happen is it'll convert from saying your name to saying something like username. And you'll get an error now because username file path doesn't exist. So that should correct the issue. If you do have any troubles with this, please reach out to us and we can take a look. So I'll add this to the idea. It says, when can you add an easy button for us? That way, when the project manager asks us for stuff 2 weeks too soon, we can just click and be done. I'll throw that on the idea board and see if we can get some upvotes on that one. Oh, and it was pointed out, you can always do a reset workstation settings as well. Sorry, I'm opening up workstation settings. For this, in regards to the grid states, you can hit reset workstation settings and reset your grid states from here as well. All right, I think that's what I wanted to cover for 7.2. I'll go through the part encoder real quickly because I skipped through this. Again, I went through it last month, I think in a little more detail. Then I want to jump into a use case for our data tables and parameter sync function that's come up in a few different ways. So the part encoder utility, the intent of it is to be used on typically be very parametric families where there's lots of different variables. Usually you're dealing with length variables. And the purpose of it is to identify instances of families that are common, that certain parameters match. This came out of a function that we already created that Evolve utilizes with hangers and other functions on the electrical side, such as conduit bends. The way we incorporated the function was with a family hanger. If I use the compare data function in Evolve, whenever you place a hanger family, there will be a parameter that gets filled out called Evolve configuration ID. So if I filter down to that, you can see I get some alphanumeric sequence. But basically what we did behind the scenes was we hard coded all the various parameter options that are specific to a hanger that come into play. Create this hash code here, which identifies it as a unique config, and then any family that matches those parameters would get the same value. The way this was being used oftentimes was, say, for example, the renumber tool. So when you're in renumber, you have the ability to do common numbering for identical parts. When you're using ITMs, you get the ability to ignore properties, or can take all the properties of the ITM. That's all great. With families, you can use parameters, but when you have something complex like a hanger family, the quantity of parameters that you would have to list, uh, really wouldn't be practical to try to make something like that work. I don't think you'd get the results you want. So the way you would do this is you will use evolve configuration ID, because that determines what's common amongst the selection. So in 7.0, this was hard coded behind the scenes. This is just something that was processing. We created this as a utility, as it has application beyond just the hanger family. And certainly what has come up over the time with hangers that will get asked is, can we add or remove attributes that define this as unique? So let's take a look at how this all works. And I'll give an example of, oops, let me jump into a project that has it in here. And not this one, but this one. So the part encoder is driven off of a data profile. So again, I'm not going to go into the details of the profile again, but basically the takeaway is every parameter that's listed here is a parameter that's going to be evaluated for uniqueness. So basically we have two different examples. When we look at the hardware, you can see that I'm evaluating the rod attachment options, whether it's got a beam clamp, coupling, blue banger, embed, etc. This other profile, which works on our no hardware families, does not evaluate those. So what this means at the end of the day is, if I were modeling the hanger families with hardware, and I'm using the attachments, beam clamp, rod couplings, etc., basically if a 2-foot trapeze has a beam clamp and then another 2-foot trapeze, the same exact thing, doesn't have a beam clamp or has a rod coupling, those are two different hangers and they will get two different numbers. If we're using this other profile that does not evaluate that, you can have two 2-foot trapeze, one with beam clamps, one with whatever, and they will get the same number. So they will be thought of as identical. So the nice thing about this, and how this can be effective, is because depending on your standards in your company, oftentimes we see trapeze standardized in various widths, rod lengths, how they are fabricated can be standardized. So not everybody has the same level of detail required to identify uniqueness and types and things like that. So this really allows you to be as granular or as broad as you want into doing something like this. And of course, now that this is a generic utility, you can make your own types of families and have the same functionality. I see the most use case in hangers. Again, we use it in electrical for bends and duct spacers, but even those are more complex. Basically, I would say any complex parametric family that you might be making, this could be very useful. So I'll leave it there. Again, if there's other questions on that feature, please feel free to post it and I can go into more detail, but I covered a lot of that on the last call. Okay, and one last thing on this part encoder that you may encounter is when opening up a project here, you may get a warning like this. And what this is telling you is that there is a part encoder rule where the data profile is not in here. And it's listing out what rules are effective, and these will not be active. So I just set this up as a use case to trigger the warning. But what it's telling you is, if I go to part encoder there's my rules. You'll see they are in an error state because they reference a data profile, which when I go to data profiles, they are not there. So that's what it's telling you. So this is just a checks and balance. The reason you may encounter this um, could be that someone deletes out the profiles. We're going to load these in the first time someone opens up a project with 7.2 to ensure that they come in. But after that, they could be obviously modified, changed, and impacted. So that's one of the error states that you might encounter there. There's a question here, multi-point, did you show the multi-point run with fab parts? I think you're referring to the multi-run select. So I did cover that, I guess just for the sake of showing the feature. I have that project still open. Which I do not. Let me see if I can find that project. Not this one, not this one. All right, let's see. We'll just use this one. This is not fab pipes. Well, yeah, I think I closed out the model. I mean, I'm in an electrical model now. The multi-run select just allows you to select one or more elements. You can hit finish and it selects everything. I think I just closed out of my other model with fab parts, but that's what that feature does. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to cover here was a way to utilize our data tables with parameter sync and how this has come up a few times. I'll give you an example. I think that would resonate with anyone. I'll try to mention a few different ways that I've seen this incorporated, but I basically want to show an example of how to make a project level lookup table. So what we want to do is take an existing project here that I have, and let's open up parameter sync. So I have a script here, and I'll just go through the basic script here, then we'll look at the data table, and hopefully this is pretty straightforward. But essentially what I want to do in this example is I want to find an element. I want to look up, in this case, a labor unit of that element, and then I'm going to multiply it by the length of the element and give me basically a total labor per foot. This is going to be a little more complex than just a straight lookup one for one, but it's not too much more difficult. And I think, again, I think it resonates should resonate with everyone. So basically what you want to do with parameter sync is we're going to first identify our two variables here. So we're going to use the evolve element lookup parameter and basically find length and find evolve description. In this example, I'm using electrical content. So I can use this as a unique identifier. The lookup script is basically referencing a table right here. You can see down in this panel, this will list out the tables that are available for this specific script. The way you add them into here is by clicking this configure button. This will display a list of all tables in the project. There's just one here, and you can add that in, and now it's available, and it gives you the proper syntax to reference it. So what the lookup is doing is it's going to this table. It's going to find the description column. It's going to match it with my description variable, which is right here. So specifically, it's going to look for evolve description. And then it's going to return the value within the labor column. So what we're really looking at, let me just open up this data table here. You'll see the table is pretty straightforward. I have a description column and I have a labor column. I have just a standard value on everything. But basically, again, we're going to say evolve description, find it here, wherever it finds it, it's going to then return that value. So what this looks like in practice, in this example, I'm just writing to comments field. But basically, when I have an object or an element here, it's going to have probably some value in here. And as I lengthen it, you'll see that value will keep increasing. So basically what I'm doing is I'm multiplying my length times, in this case, 1.1, and it's giving me some value. Um, so other ways that we've recently used this is indexing sleeve sizes, also indexing internal part numbers for standard assemblies and things like that. So you could create, a data table of all your standard catalog items or something, and you can do lookup against some of that data. Uh, the nice thing is we're looking a lot at different ways of utilizing this for families, because one of the downsides of families is the lookup tables are family based, but sometimes that information can change at a project level. So what it forces you to do is modify families within a project, which is fine, you can do it, but it's a very difficult thing to control from a BIM manager perspective. So essentially, there's opportunities here to remove family level lookups and make them project based so that if a project changes from one thing to another, which I'm sure rarely happens, you could make the change at the project level with no impact to a family and update the data. So again, using this as an example, if my labor unit changed from 1.1 to 1.2, I can just come into my data table and make that change here and refresh the project with parameter sync, and those changes would take an effect. And this type of data that I'm doing has no model impact. All I'm doing is reading some data, writing some data. Obviously work sharing applies, so you got to deal with that. Uh, but nonetheless, it's a great way to kind of manage how certain information is created. So again, I'll leave that there. I think it's just a great way to use it. If there's more questions on it, feel free to post them. All right, let me go through a couple of questions here. We've had mechanical for a while and we use it for spooling. We never set up all these features. Where do we start? All right, so the question on where do you start, whether you're a new customer or an existing customer that has only used very select few features, and now you're seeing, all these new utilities, all these complex things that definitely can seem overwhelming. So a couple things to start with. Uh, One, every week we have an office hours available, Tuesday at 2 Eastern. You can sign up for that. That's just an open Q&A with usually some training topics covered. Two, on the Foresight website, if you are an admin, you have the ability to download our sample files. So within this folder, there will be a model with a bunch of different configurations. So I'll show you an example. This is actually going to be updated, I think, within the next week or so. But you'll have a model. There'll be a mechanical, electrical, and a link. Also, a bunch of configurations and things like that. And when you open this model, a lot of these tools will all be filled out and have examples of all these features. So that sample model is a great way to look at a utility, click around, try to break it, try to see what it does. And you can see kind of some real examples. The third way, what you can do is we now have a learning management system. Let me pull that up here. So our Evolve University website is going to contain all of our topical training videos. So if I just kind of pull this up here. Um, Again, I think we'll post a link in the chat to sign up for this. But once you sign up, this is free for all Evolve customers. There are various topical courses inside of these. There'll be snippet videos. Oftentimes these are, 1, 2, 3 minute videos. There might be documentation, might be some models. I'm posting our office hours. This is going to be more of like a webinar type length video. But these are some great resources to learn the tools. Content is still getting posted to this, so this is not everything, but it is live and you do have access to it. So there's a few different ways to go about these things, but hopefully that helps. And again, you can always reach out to us if you want to have a more direct conversation about some of this stuff. The second question here, was the error fixed when spooling of having a default 3D open, object reference not set to object error? Yes, that issue was fixed. I thought I had mentioned it, but I probably skipped over it. Right here. Yep, I probably definitely skipped over it, but yes, this is a known 7.0 issue. Basically, if you were spooling or creating a view of some kind with one of our tools, you may get an object reference error. What the fix was, you basically had to create a new default 3D view. That issue is fixed, so 7.2 has corrected it. That is an example of one of the items that will also be added here. So we'll keep a record of some other outstanding bugs, even though they've been fixed. All right. I think that is all I wanted to cover today. So I guess we can wait for any other questions to come in, or we can end here.
Great, Adam. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who attended our webinar today. I would like you to draw your attention to the chat where we have links for the additional resources that Adam was talking about. That again is going to be the weekly office hours every Tuesday and Evolve University, which gets you access to all kinds of video demos. Looks like we have one more question here, Adam, from Philip, who asks, when upgrade is the parameter sync going to be the same?
Yeah, so I'll share my screen here and I'll show what it will look like. At the end of the day, it'll be missing some rules. So let's just start a new project here. So here, when you open parameter sync, and this will be when you open after an update, whether this is an existing project or not, basically you will have only these three rules. And again, the rules that you're missing were content related. And if you need to get those back, you can use the configuration exchange, navigate to the batch file, and inside of parameter sync, it's the part description ones. They're labeled the same, but those are the rules. This will not impact existing sync rules. So if you had custom project rules or anything like that, this has no impact on that. This is strictly system rules that we hard coded in that are no longer hard coded. So the only thing that would be impacted that's existing was if you were using or building off of one of these rules somehow. Probably very unlikely you do that. But but you would have to be referencing kind of how these things are being used. But this should not have any impact on that. Here's a question for the calculate rotate angle of the view when it isn't aligned. The 3D view does not rotate. Will this be updated, or is there a setting to rotate this? I guess I'm unsure of the question. I think what you're asking is, will the 3D view be aligned based on the rotation angle? I don't, I'll have to look at that. I don't think we have any any tickets for that. If you can, Michael's asking the question, uh, share with, share some examples of kind of the output. I think we have a ticket to cover the direction, the orientation of the 3D view. So you could say it's always northeast. But I don't know if that will necessarily be what you're looking for, but there is an update, I guess, for that aspect of it. Another question here, can I get a link to the example files? So that the sample files again would be found on the Foresight website. And let me just navigate to that spot one more time. So here's the sample file. So you'd have to be an admin to have access to it, and that's where you can get it. So that's where you can, and this is just a zip folder that you can extract. So there's a question here about the sleeves being twisted in the building. So that is a known issue right now, and that will be corrected in a 7.2 hotfix. So if you do find your sleeves are coming in twisted, I'm assuming it's probably with the floor is where we've seen it. That is not fixed with 7.2, but it will be in an upcoming hotfix.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming to our webinar today. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and all the social media channels to keep up with upcoming events. You can also see upcoming events at the evolvemep.com website. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.